Welcome to this week's Aiding Your Game. This week we're going to be talking a lot about dragons. With the new Fizzbins coming up, dragons is the subject. You know I love them. You know I love to paint miniatures of them. Let's jump into it. Now before we start this video, make sure you go down and hit that subscribe button to help us grow. If you don't mind the notifications, hit that bell, that way you know when we're posting new content. Leave a comment down below. Let us know content that you'd like us to cover on the page. And be sure to share us with your friends so that more people can watch our videos and help us grow. Dragons. It's in the name, Dungeons and Dragons. It's an important aspect of the games we play, but oftentimes we don't really utilize them in the game. With Fizzbins coming out, we know there's going to be a lot more opportunities to introduce dragons that are unique, different, and set for all different skill levels of characters. Possibly first all the way up, of course, to 20th, and everything in between. Any setting, any type of opportunity you want, there's going to be dragons galore. Also, most likely, ways to tweak and change dragons. Now, I've done that in some of my games where I've utilized regular dragons and put them in some type of a area or situation that's allowed me to kind of home brew and make them different and unique, make them really stand out and give them a little bit more personality and make them a little more memorable for my players. That way, as they're kind of recalling back to some of the adventures their characters have gone on, they've got great memories of memorable villains that they've faced. Now, if you watch any of my painting videos, you know I talk a lot about painting dragons. I actually have a couple of dragons that I'm working on painting right now. We're working on a new setup where I'll be able to display a lot of my dragons just because most of the time, even for miniatures, they're so large that they take up a lot of room, so they're hard to really display well behind us. But dragons for me are one of the quintessential monsters and opponents, as well as opportunities for D&D gameplay. As I've utilized dragons more and more throughout my gaming life, I've used them for villains with red dragons, black dragons. Those are probably my two favorite to utilize as villains because they can go in many different types of areas of your campaign. So you don't have to be in the frigid north, you don't have to be in a jungle or forest. Black and reds are both can, in my opinion, be the most versatile evil dragons or chromatic dragons. Though I do love me some white dragon, they're a little bit more difficult to get your players to really spend time investigating and kind of getting that arch nemesis set for. But I also utilize a lot of good aligned dragons. Bronze dragons are one of my favorite anytime I'm doing anything coastally, just because it is their area and a lot of what they're after really kind of coincides with utilizing players' interest too. They want knowledge, they want stories, they want treasure, of course, but it's not just gold and riches like a red dragon. They can really utilize the character's journey for their own ends. And then, of course, silver and gold dragons giving advice, kind of being guides, possibly even being mentors or, I hate to say patrons, but patrons for your adventuring party, putting them on quests, giving them clues, helping them out when they need it. They can really be the kind of saving grace if you have, the story must go on and you need to keep your PCs alive. There's nothing like having a gold or silver dragon come in and save the day. But dragons for me are a quintessential piece of the game. Most of my games have some type of a dragon tie-in, whether it's good, bad, or sometimes even indifferent. Dragons for me being one of the most, I guess, mythological creatures in the game. Several different game settings don't feature them super heavy. As I think about things like Dragonlance, it has a good story on why there aren't tons and tons of dragons around. Of course, in the Monster Manual, it talks about how territorial they are and how they'll destroy each other, so there's no overcrowding. But again, in a world where there's magic and so many magnificent creatures, dragons being kind of that apex piece really makes sense in having them be a part of your campaign. So, as we look at dragons, how can we utilize them more and more in our games? Let's jump right into the monster manual and talk about the primary ones that are in the basic rules and how we can utilize them with some ideas to better benefit our games at different levels. Using the monster manual, just going over dragons, there is a good introductory section just talking about dragons. Gives a lot of details on things like their layers. Also a good bit of information on just what dragons can become in your game world. It also goes into talk about the dragon age categories and just gives a good breakdown so you can start incorporating the lore of the dragons into your world. Start looking at challenge ratings and such. And we're going to start just at the beginning with black dragons, which are one of my favorite just because they are supposed to be the most evil. And I like them because the homebrew world that I play in, Aearth, has several ages that have risen and fallen. So black dragons for me are ones that I can incorporate and tie in those kind of old world settings as part of my lore. And regardless of the age of the dragon, I'm always able to tie them into history and lore. And I just love black dragons. Very evil, great villains for your PCs to face. As we move into blue dragons, I tend to use young blue dragons a lot, just because for the challenge rating, that's when a lot of your party members are doing more traveling. You can get them through areas of, say, deserts that the party could have to travel through and may not be able to skirt around. So it's great for wilderness style adventures. So generally between that 5th to 10th level is great for introducing a blue dragon that your party can encounter. For green dragons, I love introducing dragons early on. Green dragon wormlings can be a great foe for low-level parties. So if you want to incorporate dragons early on in your adventures, a group of characters that are 1st to 5th level can do really well to fight a green dragon who is just struggling to create a lair and working on transforming some of the surrounding area, and also utilizing a wormling as kind of a foil for other villainous creatures like hags or other swamp-dwelling lizard folk, encounters like that. For red dragons, I generally almost always go with ancient red dragons. These are the type of villains that I use for very powerful villains or foes that the party has to kind of overcome at higher tiers. Ancient red dragons are generally seen as the Smog type of character in Lord of the Rings setting, and because they're so intelligent and they have hordes, they can really be kind of the pinnacle of your higher level campaign setting. You can start sowing seeds of these in low tier campaigns and eventually work your campaign up to face off with a red dragon. Now for white dragons, I tend to go with young white dragons just because they're looking for a place in the world, and it's often more challenging to get a party to spend a long time in the realm of a white dragon unless your campaign is specifically built around that type of environment. Oftentimes the adventurers and most game settings tend to steer away from places like Icewind Dale, or in my homebrew world of Aearth, areas like Vinland, where there is great landscape to have white dragons. So having a younger white dragon looking to find a place of its own or being driven off by an older white dragon is a great way to bring a white dragon into your campaign. For metallic dragons, I usually go with an adult brass dragon, just because they've got good age, they know a lot of what's going on in the world, and they're usually pretty wise and can look for ways to either utilize the PCs to put them on good paths of adventure or look for PCs to help them overcome some challenges. So it's a good place to introduce those types of dragons. Now, if my setting is a little more coastal, rather than the brass dragon, I'll use the bronze dragon, and the same type of thing. I use them to kind of spur the adventure on and have them almost act as a patron almost, or a guide and someone who can drop hints and clues and help the party along the way. They don't really interfere. They don't really want to utilize and have the adventurers follow them, but they're a great way to have almost an NPC that's a dragon to help guide your story along. With copper dragons, I try to stay with ancient copper dragons, and they are generally going to be the most useful. If I have something where the players are really challenged to kind of stay on track or anything like that, using an ancient copper dragon to keep them on the path and use, again, kind of as a mentorship piece, giving them details about both history as well as future possibilities. Ancient coppers are a great option, and they don't get used very much, so it's great to be able to include them and really surprise your players. Likewise, in my campaigns, I use the ancient gold dragons for those ultimate wise personas that the player characters, when they encounter them, I like to have them encounter these dragons at a very low level to really show the impact of ancient dragons, the wisdom, the wealth, and utilize them to help put story blocks in place and help lead off the adventurer, point them in the right direction, maybe even giving them hints as to what's to come, what's at stake, and why the heroes need to help. And a lot of times you'll have characters who want the gold dragon to help, but generally they're so ancient and I hate to say powerful, but very powerful, but they are wiser and know that their time is coming to an end, so it's time to pass on to the next generation of heroes. And in my campaign, I utilize adult silver dragons, and most of the time they have really joined forces with some of the more powerful kingdoms who are also kind of good aligned and looking at just increasing prosperity and having a just system. Silver dragons are a good way for keeping the powers that be in power, so your players don't feel like they can easily overthrow massive kingdoms and governments and become king. So having the support of silver dragons to your powerful kingdoms really shows that the kingdoms themselves are there due to power and negotiation and really having those types of diplomatic impacts in your game world. And there we go. Lots of ideas with all the different dragons that we have just in basic. Just imagine when Fizzbin comes in, what you can do with that tome, how you'll be able to tweak and change dragons, what the dragon offerings that'll be readily available for you to pop in, populate your worlds with. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait. I'm already excited to do a review on the book and really bring some of that content here to our channel. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Again, make sure to leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think. Give us ideas for content you'd like us to cover. And of course, let us know where will your adventures take you. I hope you enjoyed that video. Here's a link to another video that you may enjoy. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button to help us grow. If you'd like to support us, make sure you check out the description of the video with some links and leave a comment to let us know where will your adventures take you.